Earlier this month, a service called Jump debuted for Mac, Windows, and Linux, as well as VR platforms. Jump is a subscription-based service for indie games. Founded by Anthony Palma, CEO of Kermdinger Studios, Jump seeks to solve the problem that plagues indie game devs in this day and age: the problem of discoverability. Essentially, the trouble with PC gaming nowadays is that dozens of games are released daily. What's more important to gamers than having an infinite library of games at their fingertips is having worthwhile games to play. Most of the games that get released just aren't that great. Most are just alright. Time is a finite and precious resource. Life itself is a precious gift. Too short to play mediocre video games. Generally, gamers will depend on word of mouth to find out about good games, but they'll also check out reviews and video game news programs such as the one you're looking at right now. However, a lot of good games still manage to slip through the cracks, as it were. Hence, Jump comes into the picture. Currently in beta on PC, it costs $10 a month and grants players access to over 60 games that are, according to its sites, highly curated and on-demand. It's being billed as the Netflix of indie games. In an AMA on Reddit, Mr. Palma said that his goal with the service isn't quite to replace Steam, but to offer players a simple way to bypass the shovelware that's present on Steam. From what I've been hearing thus far, the service works quite well. Rather than having players download the games in their entirety, the service downloads games a bit at a time. According to Jump, this is not a streaming service, as the games are running locally on your computer, just in chunks. According to the players, there's no issue with latency. As to whether or not it's worth paying $10 a month for, that's up to you. Personally, it's not what I'm looking for, as I have a lot of great games that I have yet to play just sitting there in my library. Hello, Hob. That said, if you're curious about the world of indie games, perhaps you're new to PC gaming and you'd like to try out some fantastic games without quite committing to a purchase, this seems like a great route. Jump pays indie devs based on how long their games are played. It's a bit like Amazon's Kindle Unlimited service, which pays participating authors based on how many pages readers go through. So is Jump viable in the long term? I think it could be, but only if it stays easy for players to discover new games through the service. Netflix has algorithms running in the background that are always watching what you're watching, and the service makes recommendations based on what you've spent the most time with, coupled with an internal tagging system that puts each show and film into categories that go beyond genre and reach into pacing, themes, etc. There are 60 games on Jump right now from a nice variety of developers, ranging from frenetic multiplayer FPS Robot Roller Derby Disco Dodgeball to brief, sad visual novel Actual Sunlight to MC Escher-inspired puzzler The Bridge. Right now there's a little something for everybody, which is fantastic, but what happens when players want more? For instance, they might love the quirky atmosphere of Diaries of a Spaceport Janitor and want more games in the same vein, or perhaps they're huge fans of the innovative gameplay of Super Lovely Planet and wish for a multiplayer experience akin to it. Would the system then recommend Disco Dodgeball? Further, what happens if you're a developer and you've made a short game? The multiplayer-oriented Disco Dodgeball is something that you can play forever, but Actual Sunlight takes about an hour to get through. While Jump may be helpful for putting your game in front of an audience, you probably won't see huge profits from it if your game is short. The devs behind Jump recognize the problem for short games as a matter of timing. During the AMA, Mr. Palma said regarding short games that they're best suited to come to Jump at the end of their premium lifecycle. Basically, once everybody who would have already bought these games has, the next step would be for these games to make the leap to Jump. Rather the same way that, once everybody who would have seen the movie in theaters and bought the DVD already has, the next step is to put it on Netflix. For Jump, these are the early days. If developers play their cards right, gathering the correct data to build their algorithms, this may be the start of something beautiful. While Jump isn't quite what I'm looking for personally, I do have to say that thus far they've picked a lot of fantastic games. Seriously, Teslagrad is criminally underrated, and Robot Roller Derby Disco Dodgeball is an incredibly creative take on the FPS. According to Jump, they're looking to add 6 to 10 carefully curated games to the service every month. Games are largely selected based upon 2 factors: critical response, that is, awards won, high review scores from players and press, etc., and high sales. Now, these aren't the only factors. In fact, it seems that making high sales a factor is a little ironic for a platform that's supposed to be about discoverability, but if you're an indie dev, these certainly help make you visible to Jump. Finally, winning an IGF award is good for more than just a badge on your Steam store page. Overall, I'm looking forward to seeing where Jump goes. If it really does turn out to be the Netflix of video games, then the game industry may truly be going the way of movies and televisions. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Think about it. We've been seeing more short games finding success with an emphasis on quality over quantity. There's a glut of content with a few dozen huge, well-financed releases every year, alongside thousands of smaller niche titles, with a few of those hitting it big. Additionally, some of the biggest hits in the game industry have been released in an episodic format. Here's looking at you, Kentucky Route Zero. This is a format that lends itself to being consumed through a subscription service. Now, these are just my ideas on the industry and Jump. What do you think? Is this platform geared towards the future of gaming, and are you happy with the way that video games in general have been moving? Hit us up on Twitter at OneRuleBeCool and share your thoughts. We'd be happy to share them on our next episode of 1RBC Gaming Weekly.